Hi there, my name's John Holonack, and today I'm going to talk to you about iridology and sclerology. Now, iridology is the study of the iris, the colour part of the eye. And the sclerology is about the whites of the eyes that are around the eye or the iris. Now, the big question is here, why would you need iridology and sclerology? What I do here, it is a naturopath's main tool to use iridology or sclerology, because what this does, it helps me to look inside what's going on behind the scenes. Because the iris itself, as the science has been found, and they've studied it in great depth over the years since the middle 1700s, is that they've seen certain markers and discolorations that indicate certain imbalances or weaknesses here. And this relates to compromise of health. So when you've got a problem or you want to improve your health, iridology is one way that allows me to look behind the scenes to see what's going on or what weaknesses or potential weaknesses there are, so we can help to strengthen them, so we can either improve and alleviate the condition that you've got or help improve your health and well-being for now and the future. That is why one would consider you having iridology assessment or sclerology assessment. Now, I'm going to go on to some charts here and we're going to talk about this. Now, there's been different charts over the years that have been developed around the world. Now, what we see in front of us here is part of an American system through one bloke. This is an iris chart that's been developed slowly over the years by a bunch of Australian researchers. And over here, this is between the Russians and some Germans, okay? Now, they all have a common factor where general layout of things are, but one looks at more the physiology or the functionality, in some cases a bit more depth here. Now, when we look back at iridology here, what we find, it first initially started to get documented in the mid-1700s approximately, where it started with a little mark and then over the years became much more a science to look at the reflex system of the body, seeing what's internally. Now, I'd also seen this in Egypt in the temples. I was not allowed to take any documentation or photos, but I'd seen these markers on the temple walls in what they call the medicine man's room. So it goes back to the Egyptians, which is fascinating. Now, coming back to the charts here, when we look at the right iris, or the colour, it pertains to the right side of the body, and the left iris pertains to the left side of the body. Now, when we look here more carefully at little different segments, this looks at the head generally and its functionality, and this comes down to looking at the part of the torso and the internal organs, and we come down to the pelvic area and the legs, and this comes down to looking at the spinal area, okay? And in the middle here, where we've got the coloured circles, this is about your digestion. And so we can see the different segments of the digestion. The R, where the R is the pupil. And if we get flattenings around the pupil, because the pupil ideally should be round, but if there's flattenings, it tells me that there's something structurally or posturally wrong. Now, what we see on the right, at times we'll see on the left, but it depends on what's happening either side of the body here. And that's the important thing. And this helps me to see that. Now, if I see markers or discolorations or something peculiar, then here I know that there's a problem, whether it's an inflammation, a weakness, or an agitation, okay? So, again here, this guy here, he was considered the master of iridology, of modern iridology, Bernard Jensen. And his belief was good health related to the bowel. So as we can see with at the bottom of the right and left irises, we can see the colours. It reflects the colours pertain to the bowel. And if you clean the bowel, it would help to improve and clean parts of the body. That was his theory and his approach. And it still applies to today as one consideration. Over here, the Russians have a different approach because they used a different approach using other reflex systems like acupuncture and herbs in the body there. Everyone has a different approach. And even here we can see some markers that have got a little bit more indicators than others here. Now, the whites of the eyes, sclerology. This should reflect what we see in the iris. This is about the study of the whites of the eyes, certain blood vessels that we see. Now in this here, the white circle here is the iris, the coloured part. And in the surrounding whites of the eyes is segmented and documented much the same as what the iris has been, where the top is the head area, and when we come down to the torso, down to the pelvic area, spinal area, and so forth. And then in the middle we have part of digestibility. Same thing in the left sclera. Okay? And I keep finding new things, which is really interesting. That's about, you know, the nice thing about science, because they're always finding new things and learning more about the body here. Now, the sclera should reflect what's in the eye. When there's not, then I tend to probe a little further. Now, we're going to go around here, and as we go through, we see a camera in front of me. Now, this is one of my iridology cameras, and the cameras these days is all about digital photography, makes life easy, with a double macro lens and a special lighting system. So then it can take good clear pictures. And then what happens, once the pictures are taken, they're put onto my laptop there, and then I put an extension screen up. So then I can show people what's going on with them, and I discuss and talk about this. Okay? Now sometimes I use this particular chart up here to show and illustrate certain things here, because this has some basic fundamentals there. But everyone is different, because the eye is like your fingerprint. It's individual. Okay? Now we have true blue and true brown eyes. And as we can see here, we have different colours. So with the blue eyes, sometimes we have colour overlays, like we have a blue sky, but we have white clouds or grey clouds or very dark clouds. Now over here we have a whitish overlay. Over here also in another eye we have more of an orange overlay, and we have these deep furrows or lines there. We can see the circular lines which relate to stress, and we can see the lines that are like sun rays, which are also about anxiety and stress and how it affects the body and the chemistry. Over here, for example, we see where the different arrows are. This shows different markers which are brown, and they show weaknesses that are happening in certain parts of the body. Everything is different, and the eye doesn't lie. Over here, for example, we have, for example, very close fibre structure with the iris. Compared to here, it's a bit more open. Now, when the closer the fibre structure, the stronger your resilience and your genetics. The more open the fibre structure, the not so strong with your genetics and resilience here, which means you have to have a different approach to keep up with the same support. Okay, so these are the things that I look at here. Whether there's darkenings here, little leaf holes or whatever, they all show me different things here. Okay. Now over here, commonly in some elderly people, we have the white rings. Sometimes they're cholesterol rings, or sometimes they're called hardening rings. Now let's just go around here, and we're going to have a look at a general assessment at what I tend to do with people here, because this is very typical that if you choose to have a health assessment, have it with iridology, this is going to be a common thing that will actually be done for you here. Now over here we have an individual's eyes, and I've taken a series of 10 shots here. Now over here, this is basically a blue eye, because we can see part of the blue colour here with a whitewash. which means in the lower pelvic area, a lot of lymphatic congestion. Up here, we've got a lot of orange. Around in the head brain area here, which means sugar, carbohydrates. There's a weakness in breaking it down and converting it into usable fuel. Over through here, we have little markers here. Okay, and so therefore here, we see that then we can, when I zoom in here, we can see these little holes around there. This tells me, like for example, there's thyroid weaknesses here with the neck here, okay? And we can see how this is really blowing up, and we have these little particular leaf holes here, different weaknesses that we see, okay? Now we're going to move on to the next eye, and over here we have, this is the left eye, and we have lots of whiteness here, which is lymphatic congestion, but we've got a lot of brown spots here. The brown spots relate to liver potential weaknesses that connect with a certain organ or gland areas here, because the liver intercommunicates with every organ and gland around the body. Again, here we have this particular orangeness there, and as we zoom in, we see on the inner segment over here, there's a weakness, and this is the thyroid area here, okay? The brownness here through here shows that there can be some back weaknesses here linked to what the liver is doing. Around the immune system here, we've got a lot of dark brown spots here. Okay, and then we've got the darkness around the peripheral of the iris itself, which means circulation, lymphatics, are not as good as what they should be. And so there is a potential weakness there. Okay, now we're going to go on to the sclera because we should see reflections there. Now over here we see that with this red line, because we only look at the bright red lines here, and this is one. This links to the thyroid and parathyroid. There's a bit of a neck issue here, but the rest of the spine is not too bad. We see a little bit of an iron weakness there, and then we look at the next eye and we have a bit of a murkiness here. Their chemistry is not quite the way it should be. Again here, this line tells me there's a potential thyroid issue. Okay, and so that's what we've seen in the iris. Over here, there's a bit of stress and anxiety here, which influences some of the blood pressure. A little bit of liver congestion here, okay? And so, you know, we need to consider that. Over here, we look at the other outer section. We see a lot of blueness through here, okay, which means iron and B12 is down. This is about weakness of the lymphatic system here with the immune system. This is all purely immune system here. And how it goes on when we see this line heading towards there, it looks at the circulating factors of the body here, okay? Over here, we're in the pelvic area, and then specifically through here, we see the bowel. When we see wavy fibers, this is about stress, okay? And we see some little lighter lines here, which affect some of the reproductive organs here, okay? Over here, on the next lower segment, we see a little bit of lower back stuff, but there's a white black spot here, which is to do with fermentation. Too much sugar in the system, okay? And it's affecting some of the pelvic functioning in the body there. And we've got this murkiness that we see a little bit down in this here, which is a bit of candida. Then we come to the upper section here. This is to do with the pituitary, the glands within the head or in the brain here, okay? And so it tells me here the pituitary gland is like a master gland for our sex hormones, our thyroid hormones, and our adrenal hormones. And so there's something that's not quite right. We've already seen predominantly thyroid hormones that are weak, and it's looking at which way they're coming from. And so therefore, the pituitary may be one of the problems area that is creating a problem. Or the feedback could be the thyroid could be affecting the pituitary itself. Over here, we can see the same thing, slightly different angled, but very much hormonal. This is about overthinking, creative thinking, excess worry, and so this creates its own set of stress. Now, these are typical things that we look at when we're doing an iridology assessment, because then it's up to me when I look at this overall, then I make a judgment here. So I know that there's certain mineral weaknesses here because we see part of this darkening that we see through here, and so I know minerals are not getting absorbed. There's a thyroid issue, and so therefore we need to support the liver. okay, to rebalance the system and bring up the immune system here, yeah, so we can help improve this person. This is very typical of what I look at when we're doing an iridology assessment, because this is about helping you, the individual, get better or get well or improve the way that you run your life. And sometimes what I do is I may need to look at a change in diet, sometimes a change in strategy on how you're running your life, okay, or sometimes I need to make up some herbs or homeopathics. But iridology is one tool to look inside what's going on. And that's the reason why iridology is a very powerful tool. I loved using this because I love looking at individuals through the iris, because it tells me how they tick. And the beauty of it is I love to see how I can help people get well. And this is the beauty of what iridology does for individuals. I hope you found this interesting, because I have. And if you're game enough, please book in and have a health assessment, because this can tell you about what your past and genetics are, how your present conditions are, and what potentially is in the future. Well, I'll leave it with you to decide what you'd like to do. Bye for now.